Hi everyone, good morning. This is Helen from Helen Westwood Maths here. Just jumping on to do this week's revision video, thinking about how can we convert recurring decimals to fractions. Now, this has been something that I've been working with my Higher GCSE Maths Success small group students. And I noticed from the discussions in the chat, a number of students hadn't done much work on this before. So I thought I'd do a video just talking through, reminding us what recurring decimals are, and then just showing some examples and some questions for you to practice for how we can convert recurring decimals to fractions. So when we're talking about our recurring decimals, this is where we're looking out for that dot to be over one of the numbers, because if we can see a dot over one of the numbers, that tells us that that number is going to recur. So we see that sort of repeating pattern. Now, it could be one number that recurs. We could have multiple dots. So for example, we could have a recurring decimal like this one. Now, we need to watch out before we start working on this, because we can also sometimes have recurring decimals like this. So actually, you'll notice the 8 here does not have a dot above it. So the number that would recur would simply be the 1. So that's the first thing, making sure we understand that notation. And then what questions can look like, what they can ask us for. So for example, here, we want to convert 0.47 recurring. Notice the dot is just above the 7. So that's the number that recurs as a fraction in its simplest form. Now, there's an algebraic method that we can use that can help us to organize our workings with this and then rearrange in the final step to write our decimal as a fraction. So our first step is the recurring decimal that we've got. That is what we're going to call x. And you can see I've written that out with a few of the 7s recurring just to remind us. Now, an equivalent relationship, if we times both sides by 10, we can write down that 10x is equal to 4.7 recurring. We know that when we multiply by 10, all of the numbers move one place to the left. Now, we're going to times by 10 again. So 10x times 10 means that 100x must be equal to 47.7 recurring. Now, what we're looking at doing is to do a subtraction that will make that decimal sort of tail, that repeating number, to cancel out, to disappear. So when we get to this stage, we'll notice that we've got this equivalent sort of recurring decimal of the 7 here and here. So what that means we can do is we can say, right, well, I'm going to subtract 10x away from 100x, because in doing so, that's going to result in that those recurring 7s will cancel. Okay, so when we do our 100x take away 10x on our left-hand side, that gives us 90x. And then we can see that the recurring 7 is going to cancel out there. And we're left with the equivalent of 47 take away 4, which gives us 43. So we know that 90x is equal to 43. Now, because we want to work out what x is, we want to write x as a fraction. Just like when we're solving an equation, we can think about dividing both sides by 90. So x would be equal to 43 over 90. And then you can always do a check with your calculator. And if you do 43 divided by 90 on your calculator, you will see that that does indeed take us back to our 0.47 recurring. But that algebraic method shows the method and it shows the process that we can go through to work out what the fraction will be in its simplest form. Now, do watch out for that requirement of giving it in its simplest form. Sometimes we need to simplify a fraction when we get to our final stage. So on this page just here, you can see that you've got some more questions. So you can share this with your GCSE Maths student. Encourage them to have a go at using that method I've talked about in the example. Now, these questions get more challenging as you move from the left column to the right column. The most complex ones you can see in the right there, but these are some really good practice for converting your recurring decimals to fractions. So I'll just pause in case you want to pause at this point, and then I will show you the solutions that are on the final page. Just a reminder, as I popped at the bottom here, this is just something that applies to our higher GCSE Maths students. So this is a topic that just appears on our higher paper. Okay, solutions coming up. There you go. You can see we've got a little bit of an adjustment that's needed for that final column. You can also work that through using your 1000x, 100x and 10x in order to go straight to that fraction in its simplest form. So I hope that was helpful and some helpful revision and practice for this week. I'll see you online soon.